Hi, my name is Mike Dillard, and this is Self-Made Man, the podcast for those who want to leave their mark on the world and create a legacy of honor, integrity, and achievement in every aspect of your life. I'm glad you're here, and once again, it is time to forge your destiny. Well, as you can see from this episode's headline, today we have an incredibly dramatic interview with Jordan Harbinger, thanks to a very unexpected turn of events in his life. Now, for those of you who don't know who Jordan is, he's the co-founder of the Art of Charm podcast. And over the past 10 years, Art of Charm has become one of the biggest shows in the world with over 4 million downloads per month. Now, to put that into perspective, his show gets more downloads every 30 days than we've gotten since we launched in our entirety in 2015. Well, a month ago, Jordan was fired from the Art of Charm and removed from the business. Overnight, he found himself without an audience, without a brand, and without an income. Everything that he'd spent the past 10 years building was gone. Now, how could that happen? Well, today you're going to find out in an episode that contains several extremely valuable lessons for every business owner out there. Specifically, we're going to talk about operating agreements, voting rights, building relationships, and some good old-fashioned karma. Now, obviously, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you can lose control of your company to begin with, but today you're going to find out how to turn it into a win if you do. Please welcome Jordan Harbinger, and after you listen to the show, make sure you check out his class on building relationships over at selfmademan.com. Well, Jordan Harbinger, welcome back to the show. I have to say this is going to be one of the most fascinating episodes that we've ever had. I'll get into why here in just a second, but thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. It's been a minute since I flew down to your not your house, but your hometown of Austin to film a product for you or with you about networking, and sort of now we've come full circle, and that networking is coming in pretty handy for me right now.
A real life example of the value of building relationships. And
yes.
So to tee this up real quick, you obviously have been the primary host of the Art of Charm podcast for the last 10 years, one of the biggest shows in the world. On average, you guys were getting over 4 million downloads every single month. And just to put that into context, Self-Made Man is about at the 4 million mark, but that is total in 3 to 4 years, not in 4 months. So, a substantial show. And then I get a email from you a couple of weeks ago that says, Mike, I'm no longer a part of the Art of Charm. I'm out. Can we get on and talk about the story and what happened on your show and the lessons that I've learned? And here you are, man. So I haven't even talked to you about the story. This is when I'm going to hear about it for the first time on this episode. But holy shit, man, what happened?
Yeah, I know. What happened? I've been asking myself the same question for a few weeks, or I guess you could say a few months. So this is a long time coming, right? And I had certain issues inside the business that had gone unaddressed, or that were, we tried to address and did not come to a successful resolution. And things started to come to a head, and we negotiated an amicable split of the company. And that, let's just say, did not turn out in the end as it was supposed to, as it had been originally intended. And I found myself on the outside of the company, along with almost everybody else who was actually a part of the company originally. And so it was kind of like, looking back on it, it was almost like a fire drill where, you're standing in the parking lot and you're looking around and you're like, oh, there's Janice from accounting, right? And it's like all these people that you went, oh, okay, we're all outside now. So in that way, it was a little bit lucky because I was able to take the vast majority of the team with me as I left.
I gotta ask you, whatever you can share, obviously, because I know there's going to be some stuff you can't and some stuff you can. But could you give me some more context as to how you ended up in a situation where you would lose control of the show?
Right. So all of the assets that were developed by the Art of Charm are company assets. And so I was in a position where I own, and I still do own, a big chunk of the Art of Charm. And it's just that at this point, it's like, okay, how much of this is actually worth the trouble? And I got to be careful a little bit about how I phrase this and frame this, but how much of this is worth the trouble, and how much of this is, okay, this decision got made for me in a way where I essentially find myself on the outside of the company in that I'd been terminated along with the whole podcast team, the whole marketing team, the whole sales team. And it's like, how do you get fired from your own company? And the answer is, when you have shared ownership, that kind of thing can happen. Is it good for the business? Well, I'll let people draw their own conclusion when the majority of the staff leaves at one time, how that shapes up in the future. And history has a way of sort of playing these things out as well.
Yeah.
So rather than subject myself to some sort of like trade libel or something like that, I'll just say, just go ahead and keep an eye on the situation. And I think we can make our own decisions based on how that happens. Now,
if you don't mind,
sure.
Because I'm in the process of thinking about, taking on investors for Self-Made Man here. So this is like really, I'm diving into this from a personal desire at this point, but I think this is really valuable lessons for everybody else. But how did you end up in a situation where you, I'm assuming, did not have 51% of voting shares? And is that how it happened? You got outvoted, or, you lost control? How did that happen?
Yeah, we had taken on too many people that had voting rights early. And even if those people added just no value whatsoever, or they were there early and were like, let's give everybody equity in the beginning. And it's like, no, sometimes people should just stay employees. Right.
Yeah.
But these are decisions I made 11, 12 years ago. And now I'm like, oh my gosh. The other thing is, you have to bear in mind that even if you don't lose control, there's a certain element of like real politic, you would call it, in a way, in a company. So look, even if I didn't own any of the company, in theory, it would be a foolish mistake to get rid of the person who brings in all of the business to any company, right? So if let's say that you have a company and you have a spokesperson, and that person just gets paid $10 an hour, and you get rid of that person, you can still be in trouble as a company. And shows like Jimmy Kimmel, for example, that host, he may not own every element of that particular show. Like, they might be able to replace him at some point with another host, just like Conan got replaced on his show by Jay Leno and vice versa. So you can end up in a situation where it kind of doesn't matter. And it kind of doesn't matter if you have a lawsuit ready to go that you're going to win and it's a slam dunk and because at the end of the day, you still have to spend your own money to fight, even if you win. And then you end up with like a used Xbox and a rusty bicycle. Right. So It doesn't necessarily protect you, even if you have control. And I found this out, well, one, the hard way. And the other way I found it out was I've been sharing this story all over the place because I'm looking for expertise and help and favors to help spread the word about the Jordan Harbinger show, which is what I'm doing instead of the Art of Charm. And so I have found that there's a lot of people that had things like control and full ownership of a company, but then somebody who was an employee just straight up stole IP or assets and just locked them out of it. And then the companies that controlled those assets, those mailing lists or those particular bits of IP are like, cool, well, we can't really transfer something like this back to you without a court order. And it's like, okay, I'll go get a court order. Oh, wait a minute. It's going to cost me $70,000 to get my 50,000 person email list back, and I might not even win, and I might still have problems with this ex-employee or something like that. So
and it might take 4 months to get.
If you're lucky, So I'm in a position where it's like, okay, I could fight over this for 18 months, and then I get the Art of Charm podcast back, and it's a complete wreck and not worth anything. Or I can do what I wanted to do for so long, which is start the Jordan Harbinger show. And this isn't the way that I wanted to start it, but look at it this way. I could have taken all those subscribers with me, and looking at the scoreboard right now, it looks like I kind of did, because a ton of people have migrated to the new show and discovered the new show. Well, and frankly, I took the team with me and the talent and the work ethic. So I'm like, okay, well, what more do I really need? Is it a smooth transition? No. But if I'd done what the original deal was that we had negotiated, I would have been entangled with this mess for years.
I don't know if they realize this or not. It sounds like they didn't, which is silly, but the value of the entire show is the relationship that you have with the audience as the host.
Right.
That's all people have listened to for years and years is you. So it's just like my email list, right? If my email list got stolen or taken over by somebody else, it would be worth absolutely nothing to that person because there's no relationship there. They'd be like, hi, my name's Bob. You haven't seen me before, but I've been the guy, working at Mike's company, and I run the show now and Mike's gone, and how are y'all doing? And be like, screw you guys. Where's Mike? I'm going to find out where he went, right? And,
yeah, that's pretty much what the iTunes reviews say on The Art of Charm at this point when you surf by most recent. There's a few people who don't know I left yet, and then there's a bunch of people that are like, what's going on?
Yeah.
What the hell? Well,
what's really interesting is this happened just a couple of weeks ago. How is the Jordan Harbinger show doing now?
Yeah, so this is something that was an emotional roller coaster for me. So The Art of Charm had 4.1 million downloads each month. That's basically when I left it. And I was like, oh my God, it took me 11 years to get there. It's going to be so impossible to rebuild. The Jordan Harbinger show has 1 million downloads. It's been out for 3 weeks as of this recording. So awesome. I had not expected that at all. So I might sound like, yeah, I've got 1 million downloads, but really 4 weeks ago, I'm not sleeping. I'm freaking out. How am I going to do this? I'm calling in favors from my friends all over the place. And I'm still doing that because and we'll get to why, but the network is so helpful. And then I also look at our show now and I'm thinking, holy crap, this happened so much This is happening, I should say, because it's not like we're back to where we were. This is happening so much faster than I expected. I really did not know that this was going to happen. And as soon as I left, there was a brief hiatus where people thought I, got hit by a beer truck or something. But now that people know where we are because we're in iTunes and people can search for the Jordan Harbinger show, and we had a lot of promotion on the network and things like that, my network, Podcast One, as well as from friends, there's just a huge influx of listeners that is continuing every single day. And I guess I underestimated that. I really didn't know that was going to happen because I'd never known anybody who this happened to. And I even called the guys over at Libsyn, the host of the show, called the network. I went to tons of meetings with podcast networks and called other big podcasters. And I was like, has this ever happened? Have you ever heard of this? And everyone said, don't worry, your audience will find you and they'll migrate. It might just take 6 months. And I went, are you sure? Are you sure? And I just didn't believe it. It wasn't like a lack of self-confidence. It was just like, I've never seen it. And it's really important that people find us because it's my livelihood and I've got to rebuild the business from scratch and it's intimidating. And sure enough, they were right. I mean, the people are looking for the content that they came for in the first place.
Yeah, you're their friend. Again, they work out to, drive to, and that's awesome. And hopefully now you've got a different ownership structure. On the new
yes, I now own 100% of everything, and I have the keys to everything. Yeah. And if somebody takes over any little bit of it, every piece of system, sort of critical infrastructure right now, I have a written legal agreement in place, and it's not only do I hold the property deed, I've got the keys to the front door, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whereas, and this is, I want to be really careful here because there's something to be said. You can't just not have partners. And I know people are like, that's why I don't have partners. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, and that's why your business growth is ridiculously slow. You can't just not work with anybody because somebody might screw you. So I don't want to encourage that. And I don't want that to be the takeaway from this. You can have, and you should have, people that you work with regularly. You can share ownership of things that you do. But the way that I do this in the future is I would not share ownership of entire companies or entities. I would set up entities that share specific pieces of IP, and I would share that. So I own the show 100%. Nobody's ever going to have a piece of that except for probably by operation of law, my wife. And then I've got products, but those are in different entities because the marketing people own shares of those products, which is fine because they're helping create those. It's not, hey, I've got this one big company and it's got 1 billion little things in it. And, oh, we're taking on a marketer and now they own a piece of it. Oh, crap. That means they own a piece of all the other stuff, too. And then we get in a fight and then something they've never touched is now in this big mix and this big mess. Now, the problem that we had before was, since The Art of Charm was such an old company by internet standards, 11 plus years old, everything was just kind of in one big pot. And it would have been inappropriate, frankly, even 2020 hindsight, for me to say, hey, guess what? I still own the show because I do it all the time. Because my partners, my former partners, would have been their rightful place to say, to hell with that. We're not going to support you in building this and then you own the whole thing. That's ridiculous for us. It's unfair. Now, the way that this shook out was it ended up being unfair, and I put that in air quotes, for me, the way it worked out. But bear in mind, this is a result of my choices, both new and old, and it's not a result of, well, 2020 hindsight, I would have done this differently. The only thing I would have done differently Mike, is I would have left the company a long time ago had I known that it was going to be easy and fun to rebuild.
Yeah.
Because let's just say the expiration date on me working at the Art of Charm had long since passed. And by the time we opened up the carton, everything was so rotten that it was like, what are you doing here? And so getting removed from the company, it was kind of like removing a Band-Aid that had just hair growing through it. It was painful to take it off, but it'd been long since time for me to extricate myself or be extricated from that situation, to say the least.
Well, the moral of the story today that we wanted to really focus on, and kind of the blessing of, all of this, is how well it demonstrates the value of relationships and taking a long-term view of relationships, not screwing people over, being generous, and the fact that, you've gone through an event where you kind of had to call in favors from people that you've gotten to know over the years, and that it's turned out so well, is really, the most valuable story here that I think folks can lock away in the long-term areas of their memory here.
Yeah. You're right. The key is one of the principles that I teach on the Jordan Harbinger show is ABG, right? So you've heard Glenn Ross, ABC, always be closing. So ABG is just always be generous or always be giving. And what that means is help other people as much as you can in a scalable way. And we can talk about what that means in a second if you want, without the attachment to getting something in return. And I always liked living that way. It was always a great way to build a great reputation. It was a great way to build a business, practice what I preach, and also a great way to make friends. And it's like, it's nice to have people say, hey, I owe you one. And then just think, hey, if I ever need to cash in on that, then great. But the trick is here, Mike, I really never thought I was going to need anything in return. It's all like, oh, yeah, give without the expectation of anything in return. And that's all fine and good until one day you go, oh, crap, I am in trouble. Right. And then you got to call in those favors because you just don't have a choice. Your other choice is suffer and slog through for the next 5 years and rebuild on your own. And it can be a little humbling and humiliating. And people were saying, oh, man, are you feeling awkward about it? And the truth is no. And they've gone, my friends and family and other people have said, really, you're not feeling strange about having to reach out and ask? And I said, yes, you face some rejection, or you put yourself out there and you could face rejection. But the truth is, the reason I don't feel awkward about it is because I have actually reached out to all these people. I've kept in touch with everyone. I've maintained these relationships. I've helped people where I can. So it's not strange for me to go, hey, Mike, I'm in a tough spot. I'd love to come back on the show and talk about the situation and the Jordan Harbinger show because I've got to rebuild. It's different than going, hey, Mike, yeah, we haven't talked in like 4 years. And I remember I borrowed that table saw from you and I didn't return it. But here's this other thing. And I know, feel free to say no, but I really need a favor. And I'm doing it's awkward that way. But it's not awkward if you're just like, hey, man, I really need some help. And I don't have to say I would help you in this situation. It just goes without saying because of the past pattern of behavior. So it wasn't a big deal, surprisingly, for me to reach out to dozens of people and ask for help because I had, as they say, dig the well before you're thirsty. I had actually done that. Thank God. Because I never thought I would need to. That's the thing. You never think you're going to be thirsty. You never do. You always think that, or if you do think you're going to be thirsty, it's like, oh yeah, in a year I'm going to write a book and I'm going to need to reach out, blah, blah, blah. No, you just never know. You never know. And it's a great way to live because you have no idea. You could have $100 million in the bank right now. You could have your Bitcoin on lock. And then the next day it could be like, oh, so what happened was, can I sleep on your couch?
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. Well, a minute ago, you mentioned the whole, automated side or scalable side that methodology you've used to maintain these relationships. We actually talked about this in another podcast with Jason Gaynard recently. I don't even know if it's going to be live by the time this goes live, but that topic came up because Jason's another guy who really has built his company on relationships, right? And so I would love it, if you could share any words of wisdom when it comes to your methodology.
Sure. So I love Jason Gaynard. No surprise, we get along really well. And he's just such an awesome guy. And I didn't say awesome networker, even though he is, because he's a great person. And I think that if you're doing this right, people don't say, oh, yeah, he's the most connected guy. They might know that about you, but that's not kind of what your reputation is. because it seems organic if you're doing it right. And so I use a couple of different techniques, I guess you would say, or systems is really the wrong word because one's systematic and one's opportunistic, to maintain my relationship. So when I make a connection with somebody, I always make sure that I add them to software to systemize the follow-up, like Contactually. I use that because every 90 days or so, I want to check in with people. If you think that's cheating, cool. Good luck keeping track of 1,000 people in your life. It's just impossible, or 500 or 200. It's just not going to go well for you. And it's fine, in my opinion, to get birthday reminders about people in your network and send them messages and things like that. But I also use opportunistic network maintenance. And what I mean by that is if I'm logging into Facebook and I see someone in my news feed and they just had a kid or they just got a new car, I don't just click like. I don't make a comment there. I send them a text or I call them on the phone. Or if I know I'm going to see them in person, I make it a point to bring it up. Because a like on social media, people don't even notice. A comment, they might notice. A text message, they're certainly going to notice. An email might get caught in a filter. A phone call is even more intimate. And obviously seeing someone in person is even more than that. So I use both the systematic follow-up. So it's like, okay, this person has a birthday. This person you haven't talked to in 3 months. Those systems, I use those. And I use the opportunistic methods of seeing people in a news feed, having somebody mention your name, and then I jot your name in my to-do list, and I reach out later, or I text you and say, hey, I'm hanging out with my friend Susan, and she mentioned you, and I send a text to you and maybe a selfie. That's just really easy stuff that puts people at top of mind. And it's not sort of the smarmy automated stuff. I hate it when I get a message from a system, and it's like, hello, friend. Haven't spoken to you in a while. What's the latest with you? It just puts all the work on you, and it's clearly just this automated crap. Yeah. I will just say, hey, look, there's no response necessary to this. And another thing I'll do is every morning or every other morning or so, I'll scroll all the way down to the bottom of my texts on my phone, because you know how the bottom is people you haven't texted in like a year.
Right.
And so I'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, and I'll see somebody and I'll go, oh my gosh, I met this person at Traffic and Conversion 2 years ago. I can't believe we haven't talked since then. I must have forgotten to add them to my Contactually. I'll just send them a text and go, hey man, no response necessary. Just wanted to check in. I saw this old ass text exchange. Hope you're doing well. If there's anything you need help with or support with, let me know. Otherwise, just saying hello.
Nice.
The reason that I say you don't have to respond is because giving other people homework to correspond with you is a little annoying if they're busy. The other thing that's really irritating is so many busy people like you, myself, will get, and tell me if this resonates, you'll get an email from somebody you haven't spoken to in a while, and you're like, oh, hey, John, what's going on, dude? I haven't talked to you. And then they reply like, oh, nothing, just wanted to see how you were doing. Haven't talked to you in a while. And you sort of get in the back of your mind like, wait a minute, is this sort of warming up? Are they warming me up to then ask for something? And then when they do, you're like, oh, man, you just went 3 and 4 emails deep and you're going to ask me for this favor. Could you have not just come out and said it? Now I thought we were, you just feel kind of duped.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. No, totally agree. In fact, I've had to end 1 or 2, not many, but 1 or 2 relationships or friendships in my life because of the constant need on their part to check in.
Yes.
And it's just, once a week, once every 2 weeks. Hey, what's up, man? And I'm just like, I'm freaking working. I'm being a dad. I'm building a company. Like, I have some of my literally lifelong best friends, like Tim Irway, my old business partner, Magnetic. I've known for like 15 years now. He was, one of the few guys. He was one of 5 guys that I had out to my 40th birthday party last year, right? Tim and I might talk, and that includes email and text twice a year. And that's because I know he's busy. I know he's well, so I'm not going to just sit there and waste his time and check in or whatever. And our relationship's super solid. There's no need for that, right? There's no insecurity around it. But if someone's really busy, a great way to just, put that relationship on ice is to just do the check-in that doesn't have a point, doesn't have, anything specific. And it's just an interruption in that person's day, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I totally agree with you.
That's one of the, so to the point is make sure that they know there's no response necessary. So they're not like, oh, a task.
Yeah.
Usually they're going to respond anyway. Every other week, though, is way too often to check in with somebody. That is weird. That shows me that they maybe aren't doing a whole lot, which is fine. I mean, some people just kind of have their 9 to 5 and raise kids and stuff, and that's it. And I get that. Maybe they're living vicariously through you. You know, they see you on social media and they're like, man, Mike's really making moves. This is really cool. It gets to be a little bit tedious. And that's why I like 45 or 90 days. And I will really only check in if I'm like, okay, it's been a long time, or this article is right up your alley. I'm going to send you this. No response necessary. That's not annoying, because if I forget to respond, I don't feel like a dick, and you've sent me something of value. And this isn't just one day I might need you. It really is without the attachment of anything in return. That's why my situation now is so sort of funny in a way, because I never thought I would ever have to call in any of this stuff. We all have this sort of overly optimistic view of how things are going to go generally. So I was like, one day when this is all amazeballs, I'm just going to be glad that I wasn't a jerk to people on my way up to stardom, or whatever you're just going through your head. You're not thinking, okay, cool, I really need Mike to promote my book in a few years, so I'm just going to keep in touch and pretend to be friends. That's not what we're doing here. You really can't fake not having an agenda, because it doesn't look the same as actually not having an agenda. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of examples and stories to share with folks, right? Like, there was a situation in the last 12 months when, Self-Made Man's starting to grow. We're starting to build a nice audience. And, a friend, quote unquote, that I've known for 7 or 8, 9 years came out with a book. And I hadn't spoken to them in 5 or 6. And I mean, there's no email contact, there's no text, there's no conversation for a good 5 or 6 years. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I'm getting hit up by their assistant, by their PR person, by their podcast booking person, and by them, literally by 3 or 4 different people every day for a week or two to promote their new book. And
jeez, that's tedious.
Well, it's just like, this feels horrible, right? I feel like I'm being used right now, and this is a person that I considered a friend, but now it's just like I haven't heard from them in years, and the first time I do, it's because they want something. And I was just like, no, like, it doesn't feel good, right?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. And, it's funny because it does feel good to help other people. So I'm always torn because I don't want to get used either. I understand that. And I've spent the last 11 years dodging pitches from people to come on the Jordan Harbinger show, or what was, The Art of Charm originally. And especially as because everybody knows who you are, everybody knows about Self-Made Man and sort of the podcast sphere. So of course you're getting books thrown at you practically. Hey, I want to come on your show. And it feels good to help people, so you kind of want to do it, but then also you kind of feel like you want to resist it, especially if it's coming from somebody who you go, hey man, I've reached out to you 3 times, never heard back. Oh, I was so busy with this book. Now I want to come on your show. And it's like, oh man, you're just so self-serving. So for me, it's always been fun to help other folks and see other people succeed. And if you can adopt that mindset, then if you ever really do need to call on your friends, they will be there. And even if 90 out of 100 people, they screw you over, they never help you, they never answer you, which, by the way, is not the case at all for me and for anyone probably. The 10 people who do help you are worth their weight in gold, and it was still worth it. So I really encourage people to get behind this, because I think that, look at it this way. I could have left, when I left AOC, I didn't take social media. I didn't take the mailing list. I didn't take the website. I didn't take the podcast. Yes, it's very fortunate that the majority of the team, almost everyone, has come with me as well. But I could have easily left without that. And then I would have had my skills as a broadcaster and as an entrepreneur. That's great. But doing it alone, holy moly, would that be hard. The relationships are saving my ass right now, candidly. Yeah. They're saving my ass right now.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. It's these are huge life events, right? That someone has their livelihood pulled out from under them, and to have you share your story and how you're making it through it is just really valuable for folks. That's the one thing that I've talked about with potential. Well, it's the one thing that I've talked about recently around conversations of taking on investors for Self-Made, is the fact that, hey, I've never done that because I understand there's risk involved, and I don't want to lose control of the company because it's my livelihood, right? If I lost my email list tomorrow, if I lost control of that, that is my single biggest asset and it's my livelihood. I don't know what I would do, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not like you can throw and write a book together or build out a course in a week. It takes months and months to do that. It takes a budget to do that. And once you have that, you need an audience available who, might want to buy it. And so if I ever lost control of that, I'd be like, I can't do that. So that was a lot of our conversations were around structuring any kind of investment deal. And the fact that essentially email list is essentially off the table, or at least I get to leave with a copy of it. And again, the relationship with those who are on that list are with me anyway. So if the company took it over, they might get some marginal value from it, but it would be a fraction compared to what I would continue to receive from that as well. So
you really can't overestimate the importance of relationships, because you can lose I just wish there was a way for me to highlight this even more. I cannot understate this. There is no better resource that I've had in my life other than the relationships. And I've said that before, but now I'm really in the middle of this. This is something that if you said, hey, Jordan, look, I've got a bunch of financing, or I sold Self-Made Man and I made $110 million. Look, I'm going to give you $2 million to rebuild the Jordan Harbinger show. But as an experiment, you can't utilize any of your relationships. I would say no deal.
Yeah.
Because the relationships right now are worth far more than any 7-figure sum, frankly. Yeah. Because those are what took the longest to build. They're the ones that are the highest value levers in my life and in my business right now. Not only just emotional support, not only is it great to be able to access a platform. I'm very grateful that I get to talk to the Self-Made Man audience right now as well. But really, it's just having this brain trust of people that have gone, hey, I've been through this. Here's something you should do. Here's some other thing you should not do. And then having people spread the word on top of that. That's the reason that the Jordan Harbinger show has 1 million downloads after 3 weeks, not because I'm so great or because I'm such a good marketer or because blah, blah, blah. It's because people have my back, and they have it in the way that's not just crap, I got to look like I'm doing something for Jordan because otherwise he's never going to leave me alone, but a genuine relationship where people go, wow, you really did get screwed. Look, I'm going to go the extra mile for you. And to have that happen times 100 is an unstoppable force. You can't purchase that. You can try to purchase ads, but $2 million worth of ads would not have gotten me the type of exposure that's helping me rebuild right now. It just wouldn't.
Yeah, no, agreed, brother. Well, I'm glad things are going well for you. I'm super surprised as you are at how fast your show is taking off again. And obviously, the Jordan Harbinger show, people can find that on iTunes. But do you have a primary website up as well where people can get on your email list, find you on social media? Where's your new central hub now?
Yeah, so jordanharbinger.com is where I'm at. I'm at Jordan Harbinger on Twitter and Instagram as well. And I would love to be able to do what I'm doing now is I'm just doubling down on teaching people the networking and relationship skills, because as interesting as it was before, now it's like, oh my gosh, this is better than any insurance. It's better than any legal document. This is the single best investment that I've ever made in my life in any arena has really been building and maintaining relationships. And so that's what I'm going to dedicate myself to teaching, because not only am I a case study for it right now, but I just can't imagine how much harder this process would be, this already hard process would be, without knowing how to create and maintain relationships in a way that's sustainable and scalable.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. Well, I appreciate the fact that you consider me a friend and that you reached out and that I have an opportunity to help you out. And I'm excited for you, man. It's going to be an even brighter future, ironically. So it's just freaking awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited for it now. But I'll tell you, it's scary in the beginning, but with the network around me, I am more excited than ever. Very
cool, brother. Very cool. Well, Jordan, I wish you the best as always, man. It's so good to always have you on the show, and you've always, supported us and our work here, and you flew all the way to Austin to film with us. So I appreciate that immensely, and I'm grateful I can return the favor, brother.
Thank you very much.
Well, brother, thank you so much as always for coming on and for helping me and supporting Self-Made Man. It's absolutely appreciated. And folks, if you're listening to this, Jordan's one of the best in the world, when it comes to networking and relationships. You've just heard how important it is today. go subscribe to Jordan Harbinger Show on iTunes, Spotify. Gosh, where else can they find it on Android?
Android, you can just go grab Castbox. It's one of the best podcast players for Android, in my opinion. So you can just grab Castbox and find us right there.
Awesome, brother. We'll keep kicking ass, and I'm sure we'll have you back on soon. Guys and gals, thank you so much, as always, for listening. I appreciate your support tremendously, and we'll see you next week for another episode. Take care.